first question is during the Q&A panel there was announced the tri-spec. And I think the WoW community is now mind blown because they have asked for like years, and now they are finally getting it. So, is that your direct response to a long-asked feature?
I think it's something that we finally felt like it was just the right time. You know, it goes along with what we're doing with the actual individual specs, and our goal is to make each spec feel more unique. And I think once all the specs are more unique, we're not worried as much about you swapping at a different time because we think you're going to get some benefit in the middle of a fight from like doing the swap. I think it's more that at that point you now play that specific spec on that class, and so it becomes okay to swap things around like that a little bit more often. But we are super excited that people love that. I mean, it's definitely something that we had heard tons of feedback on, like why do we still have this old system, you know, kind of what's the deal. But I think on our end we felt like there was some work to do on the talent system to make that feel like it was the right time to do it.
All right. Yours.
Mr. Pandaria gave us a lore worker show for the telling story part. What will bring Legend for to the lore's ability?
For Legion?
Yeah.
Well, we have a couple of new things that are going to be happening. I don't know if you guys have played the demo downstairs, but did you see the little boxes with the talking heads in them? That harkens back to Warcraft 3, and it's something that we really loved, and I think you'll see us using that a lot throughout the game as a new technology to deliver story in a much more, in-your-face front way. Anything that has a box like that would have VO associated with it, so you'll always hear a voice, and it gives us the opportunity to tell that story even when the character's not there. So, you know, imagine you're doing a dungeon and you've been sent there for a quest, you know, and an event happens in that dungeon. You know, we can put up that talking head like that person is talking to you, like, oh, good job, you know, that's the right thing, keep going. And it allows us to string the story together in ways that we haven't really done before. I mean, before we could have put text in the box, you know, but I think a lot of people could miss that. When you see the head, it's animated, someone's talking, it's got voiceover. I think that's going to allow us to deliver a stronger story overall. In regards to like a specific character, there's lots of new characters in Legion that are going to be delivering storylines. It's not necessarily like we have one character like Lore Walker Cho that would be that guy who carried the story for the entire expansion. I think we have a lot of different story beats here to hit on. We have Illidan, we obviously saw Sylvanas in the intro cinematic, Vanion. So there's a lot of big players in this expansion that you're going to be interacting with over the course of the zones.
Yeah, there's a new scaling level for the items. Does it mean the current Warforged system will go away?
Well, that we haven't figured that out yet. There's a number of things about what we talked about today that we still have to play them on beta. We've got a lot of implementation to do. What we love about doing here at BlizzCon is sharing all of our ideas, sharing where we're at. Obviously, we're going to get feedback from everyone, and we're going to have to finalize things. But I think what we can tell you today is what our goals are for a system like that. You know, our goals are to make it so that items always feel more lucrative to you no matter what you're doing in the game, right? And so the concept of an item that can scale means, you know, based on how difficult that content is, we can make the rewards scale up to be, you know, just as feel appropriate for that type of thing. And on our end, internally for us, it allows us to make more items in a shorter period of time. Because we're not making so many multiple versions, right? You can make one item and then have that item scale up and down, and we can set all the different parameters of how the item would scale. If it's just item level, can it be the stats? You know, all those kind of things we can set however we want. So it's really, I think the exciting part is the technology and the fact that we're going to use it across the whole game. You know, you'll see those scaling items all over the game. So it's not like the kind of thing that you would only see just in raids or just in dungeons. We're going to use them in our new world quests. They're going to be used in the outdoor world. So it's a big thing.
You would?
Okay. The lore is a very important part of World of Warcraft. Mist of Pandaria had many short stories in books, and War of Draenor was very poor on that side. Will Legend will be more like Mist of Pandaria or Warlords?
We've definitely heard that feedback, that people feel like they love connecting with the world in as many ways as possible, like you mentioned with short stories and things like that. It's definitely a goal for Legion to have more of that type of content. And I think part of that is because of the framework of that story. Legion is such a strong concept of the Burning Legion coming to Azeroth, invading. We kind of have to band together, both the Horde and Alliance, to take it on and be able to do it. We've basically recruited the Illidari to have demon hunters come into the world. So I think we also have a lot of different story beats that we can hit on that can feel interesting to players. And in addition, we have the concept of every zone in the game has its own completely individual separate story. And that's how we're able to do the skilling zones and have the skilling zones not feel out of order when you play them. So for example, Val-Shara, the zone, Val-Shara has a world tree, Shaladrisil, and it's been poisoned. And essentially, that's the storyline of Val-Shara. So all your questing there revolves around that. Working with the local druids, you're going to go to the Nightmare, which is something players have wanted to do for a long time. And that's its own contained story, but that story at the overarching level is all about Legion, right? It's about the invasion has affected all 5 zones. But when you choose to play Val-Shara, you will experience that story. If you choose to play Stormheim, you would go to Stormheim, and your story is all related to the Vrykul. And it's all about where do the Vrykul go when they die, what's their history, how do they live in their homeland. And so it means that you can choose any zone in whatever order you want to do, but you should still get a connected story across the whole thing. Whereas in the Mist of Pandaria example, it's the Jade Forest, and then you go to Valley of the Four Winds, and then you go to Kunlai. You play through everything in that exact same order. Here, you can imagine if you make an alt, you could choose to go in a completely different path than you might have gone in your first character and get something new.
You just mentioned the Emerald Nightmare. Is it some kind of a substitute for an Emerald Dream expansion that won't ever happen?
I can't say anything won't ever happen because we don't know. We have tons of ideas of things we want to do. But we loved getting the chance to finally do a little bit of that kit here in this. And Val-Shara was a zone that really gave us that opportunity. Val-Shara is really the homeland of druids. So we've got all of that backstory to get into. Dryads, druids, just healing the world, the land, and being able to explore that storyline a little bit deeper is something that's exciting. And then when you get to put that into the dungeons and the raids, you get all the new art. And we get a chance to concept what would the Nightmare look like, what is that. Yeah. A lot of excitement on the team about that one very specifically, just because it does have so much of a history. We've constantly mentioned it over the years, like the Nightmare, the Dream, that kind of vibe. So I think it's really exciting for us.
All right. Next one.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about the runes that increases damage against specific raid bosses? How expensive are they, and will they going to be available for every single raid boss?
It's a great question. We don't know that yet. The one that you saw today in the presentation is the example of how we think that system would work, and part of that is related to inscription, as you saw. We think that could be a cool concept, and that it could make inscription feel like it's, because not having major glyphs anymore, it feels like there's a little bit of a gap to fill, and we've got to make sure that there's something there, that they can do. And that's one of the ideas. I don't think every single one always has to be related to, you can do more damage against this one boss at this one time. We can do other things. We could say that there's damage in an area. We could say that when you get below a certain amount of health, maybe there's one that would give you a hot that would heal you a little bit, but only in this specific place. So I think there's a wide variety of things that we can do with that stuff. I think where we have to be careful is making sure that those things don't feel required.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the key to a system like that, is they need to feel fun, need to feel cool, but as soon as anything in the game feels like it's required, I mean, that's kind of a red light for us. That's when we go, and we've obviously done it over the years, but that's definitely a sign that that's not what we want, right? The game is about choice. It's about your character and your stuff. We don't want to feel like you always have to do this one thing to feel like that you're successful at the game. We love the idea, though. Okay. So I'm glad to see you're interested in it, because showing it today was one of those things, like, how does this idea work, a lot of ideas we talk about today will definitely end up in the game. But I'll totally honest, some ideas will, probably we might decide, that didn't work out very well on beta, so we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
If anyone that's been to BlizzCon before has definitely seen that happen with us.
Far along.
Yeah. I think Path of the Titans was one that we talked about here.
Dance Studio.
There's been all kinds over the years, and I think part of that, just our connection with our fans, is what makes our game so great. WoW wouldn't be WoW without the fans that support it, so it's important for us to share the ideas early and get feedback on them.
Many players try to reach personal goals with achievements. Have you ever think to add some rewards for those who reach a 10, 15, or 20,000 points?
For specifically for like all their achievements combined together, we do have a couple achievements that are for achievement points, but you're right, there are no rewards other than title. I would say we have a pretty hard line on what we feel like are acceptable rewards for achievements, because in the end, achievements are really supposed to be optional. So as soon as we put something outside of vanity on an achievement, I think that's when it becomes a little bit of a strange situation. But anything vanity related is completely fine, meaning things like mounts or pets or titles or tabards or stuff like that.
Do you already know how the players will unlock flight in Legion?
Well, we know it's going to be through an achievement, very similar to what we did with Warlords. We thought that concept worked well, where we let players, over the course of the expansion, they can earn a certain amount of things that let us know that they've experienced the content, right? And that, I feel like, is the key, is that, we feel like they've already experienced the content on the ground, which is the way we kind of designed for it to be intended to happen. Then, no big deal. You can have flying and all your other characters, and then you can fly all around because you've already done that content, right? And so we felt like that was a good compromise, where we felt like that our content is experienced in the way we want it to be experienced, but players are still able to get flight, and so that's what we're carrying forward into Legion, the same concept. And there are some parts of that achievement you'll be able to start earning right when Legion launches. You won't be able to complete it, but you can definitely start earning progress towards the achievement right when it launches. And I think that's important, so that you kind of feel like you have that long-term goal, so that and obviously we'll be forthcoming with information once we decide what that, what those things are going to be, as far as being able to complete it.
Yeah, as we're speaking of long-term goals, the artifacts, you can collect artifact power.
Yep.
Is there a weekly or daily cap, or can players just spend 24 hours of grinding and gather more and more and more artifact power?
We currently, it could be something that we might have to implement. It just depends on, number one, how the different sources of artifact power work out. Obviously, the game is still internal right now. So it's not like we've had a lot of people pound on that system and get a feeling for how much artifact power could you actually earn in a day? Like, what is the maximum that you could do? If it turns out that it feels like it's creating an awkward situation for the system, then clearly we would want to do something. But I would say that our philosophy is that we don't ever want to have caps. We don't ever want to have that kind of thing. The goal is that as a player, you should feel like as much time as you want to put into the game, that we will reward you for that time. Right, and I will tell you, the tail on artifacts we expect to be very, very long. Meaning that, did you guys see the artifact tree? Where you put the traits in, and you can kind of pick your path. You get a couple of those pretty quick, during the leveling experience. But then the majority of the rest of them are going to take some time to unlock, right? And in the end, you can unlock everything in that whole thing, but it's not going to be fast, right? And I think part of that is just the goal of Legion has to have a very, very strong in-game when it launches. We don't want it to have a strong in-game from a patch later or from something we add down the road, although we will continue to add content in later patches. It's extremely important to us that Legion has a strong in-game at the start. And I think that the artifact is one way to do that, and the world quests is probably the other biggest one to give us that long tail at the end, and something that's not necessarily like what daily quests were from Mists of Pandaria and different from what bonus objectives were in Warlords of Draenor. It's a little bit of a newer system.
Will we see the invasion of the Burning Legion in Azeroth, beside the Broken Hives? Maybe that some cities will be destroyed or damaged?
Great question. You totally will. We're planning to do a launch event. You know, like with WoW, we always generally have a launch event that kind of synchronizes up with the launch of the expansion. And the Legion invasion is what that launch event will be. So the Legion will actually be invading different parts of Azeroth, Kalimdor and Eastern Kingdoms more specifically, and a whole zone can be invaded, and then there are unique quests and unique things for you to do in that zone for that limited period of time until you can push the Legion back out. And then, you know, you log in another day, a couple days later, they'll be invading a different zone. And that's what we want to do for the launch event, but I actually think we might even plan to continue that a little bit even after the launch event, that the Legion can continue to invade, assuming we have a reward that feels appropriate for players.
I think I know the answer to the question, but I ask it anyway. Do you have maybe plans to that Sojourner's will make an appearance in Legion?
You know, it's kind of hard to say that he wouldn't be anywhere in the whole game, since he really is the main character in charge of Legion at this point. I think the question is how Sargeras would appear in the game. You know, because it's something we've talked about whenever we've talked about, like, how would you fight him? Because you'd be like up to his toe because he's so giant. You know, it's definitely something that we've talked about. And I'm not going to rule it out for the expansion that we wouldn't do that, just because he's such a huge character that plays into this kit. But I can't tell you that we have any very specific plans on how that's going to work. But he definitely will play a role in the expansion, and we will figure out a way to make that feel like it's a meaningful experience.
Very epic.
For sure, he would be super epic.
Can we expect to see the new models of the goblins and worgens in the release of the game?
Of the new meaning,
The new character models for goblins and worgens.
Oh, in launch with 7.0. You know, I don't actually know the exact date of the plans for that. I would have to find out from someone on the team. I don't know. It's something that we're working on, but I don't know the exact date for the launch. I'm sorry.
Don't worry.
So there will be legendaries again, and not one of them, and not through a quest. They just drop. Can you explain us how they drop, how to get them, and a little bit more of the legendaries in Legion?
Well, there's going to be lots of different ways. There's not like any one specific way. I mean, the way we talked about it in the panel today was in comparison to our old world drops. World drops were extremely rare, you know, back in original WoW. So I think one big question would be the tuning of the drop rates, of how to get them. The key, though, is that when you do get one, that you have that crazy feeling, you know, like, oh my god,
like in classic.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we want, and that was kind of what that motivation was. The thing about in classic is, like I was saying, it's like, I mean, I played through so many characters, and I think I got one. I think Hand of Edward the Odd, I think, was the one that dropped. Yeah, I think that's the one that I got. So the key to that system feeling good is tuning the drop rate so that, you know, someone can have the hope that they're gonna get it, right? But not dropping too many to where they get common, because once they're common, then they would lose that feeling, right? If all of us here had like the same, you know, so I think that's a balancing act. What we want is that feeling of like, you know, and that there's always a chance it could happen, right? Like, that's the thing with those world drops. You weren't thinking about it all the time, but, you know, there was a chance. And I think in so many of the more recent expansions, there hasn't even been that chance. So I think that's what we wanted to get back into the game, was that, oh, you know, I don't have to do this thing again, like, but I kind of like doing it. There's always a chance like something could happen, you know. And it's a little bit random, but it's also a little bit more of the reducing the barriers for a player to want to do some form of content and making it feel like there's a chance something unexpected could happen. Because I think the worst thing to have happen to the game would be for it to feel formulaic. Every time I run this dungeon, I get item level 720. 720, 720, 720. Like, I think it's very cool that you could run that dungeon, and there's a small chance, but there is a chance that a 750 might drop. There's an even smaller chance that like an 800 could drop, right? That chance is extremely tiny, but there could be a chance, right? And I think that's just a barrier of like, oh, I've ran that dungeon a bunch. But if you think about it in those terms, it would be like, well, I'll help you out. Let's go do it because there's a chance I might get like, a really good item. And I think that's our philosophy on it. So then we have to do all the work to make sure of how high should the scaling be, how often can that happen, do we track it on an individual level? So like if you got one wouldn't drop again for another period of time. So those are the questions about making sure that it feels good. But philosophy-wise, we feel very strongly that it's going to be something that makes the game feel really good and give it something it maybe hasn't had in a little while.
I really like that idea.
We know that there will be plenty of demons in Legion.
Yeah, for sure.
Surprise!
But
Nailed it.
yes, but can we expect to see, and will the whole gods will play a role in Legion?
There's not any big role for old gods in this expansion necessarily. I'm not going to say that you wouldn't hear anything about that because we have so many different races and so many different storylines to tell. There's very well that there could be a mention or something like that, but definitely no key role in this expansion in any way. I think we love that storyline. That's always it can be an interesting storyline to go back to, but we've definitely hit that storyline pretty hard in recent expansions. So this gives us something completely different to focus on.
So I have the chance to find a legendary with my character, and you're introducing the new transmogrification system.
Oh yeah, super excited about
which
that.
Looks pretty neat. I have to say,
It's retroactive. It's got so much cool stuff.
I'm wondering, will it be possible to transmogrify legendaries?
That's a question we get all the time. We don't have any hard set rules on it yet, but I would say most likely there's never going to be a way to transmog like your legendary onto something else, but that there is a possibility that we might let you take an item you have and transmog it onto your legendary. So if you wanted to change your legendary to Hand of Edward the Odd, maybe we would allow you to do that, but the other way, no, because then it doesn't feel like you've earned it, right? If you could take your transmog of your legendary, which you spent all that time on, or and been able to do something on it, putting on another character, I think feels a little bit weird. So I think we want to maybe have it be one way, but not the other. And that's kind of where we are today on that.
All right. There you go.
The community. Cool.
Oh, cool.
A lot of players would like to know if some areas of Stormwind will be repaired in Legion.
That's a good one. It's something we talked about doing during Warlords. I think I mentioned it a couple times. I think a couple other people have. We have a plan of what we would want to do there. It's just a matter of priority. Of like, we can do that, or we can put that effort into something else. You know what? That's one I'll take back to the team, actually. So that's a great question. I'll take it from your community, and I'll take it back to the team and talk to them about it.
Great.
Just as we're going, is there a legendary in raid? In the raid?
A chance for legendaries to drop?
Only the world drops.
Right now it's world. It very well could be raid and dungeon. We just haven't made that decision yet.
Okay.
So